Listening to Ethnic Ability on 95.36 EBA FM. I'm Zel Ishjal, and I have with me today a very special guest. His name is Thomas Eng, and Thomas is the proprietor of Janashton, which is a very unique company, and we're going to hear all about Janashton very shortly from Thomas. Thomas, welcome to Ethnic Ability.
Thank you, Zell.
And thanks so much for joining us today and coming all this way. It's quite a long trek to, although we're in Melbourne, but from one end of town to the other.
It's okay.
Now, tell me, you initially started out as a proprietor of quite a successful business and you made quite a lot of money, but then you gave all that up.
Well, actually, that's not quite correct. I started life as a corporate person. So I worked for big multinational companies for 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the last 15 years of that, I was working as an expatriate. So, that's when you can earn, reasonably well.
Right.
And
So,
yeah.
as a working in the multinational companies, what were you doing and which companies?
There were two companies I worked for. One is called Azia Brown Boveri, which is a Swiss engineering company.
Uh-huh.
I worked for them in Malaysia, then moved on to Hong Kong, then to Eastern Europe, and then back to Hong Kong and set up their China operations.
Wow.
And then I left and I joined a British company called Rexam, that's in packaging, and I was the Asia Pacific MD for a few years, setting up operations all over, China to Japan to India to Australia and New Zealand. And then after 4 years, I returned to ABB and took on the role as the country manager for them in the Philippines. And that was my last stint as a corporate employee.
Wow. So, I mean, I'm asking you the companies, not because I want to promote those companies, but just to give an idea of the level of the positions you were working at and your caliber in these positions. So, I mean, why did you give all that up?
Well, working as a corporate executive has its plus and minuses, and after a while, the minuses became more than the pluses, and I wasn't enjoying myself, and I had settled the family in Australia. I like it here, and I decided, well, it doesn't cost me that much to retire in Australia, so I decided to have an early retirement at the right old age. I think that was 48 or 50,
Wow,
something like
that
that.
was
Yeah.
early.
Mhm.
But what was it that you weren't enjoying?
Well, the main thing I tell everybody is that when you wake up in the morning and look in the mirror and you tell yourself, well, the 80% of my time today is going to be spent on things that don't add any value to the business. That's when you decide it's time to check out. Because in a big corporation, you have to deal with a lot of internal issues and politics and
Right.
people who want information in three different formats and different colors, and so it's a lot more about form than substance, and I decided I couldn't deal with it anymore. And it
No.
was during that time that I had a bit of free time, and I was invited to join um, a computer school for the blind. I was on the board of trustees, and that was my first exposure to the wonderful world of understanding how a blind person can utilize technology to use the PC and the internet.
And so that was because of your background as an engineer, and so you were familiar with technology.
Well, actually, my background. I'm a chartered accountant, but I eventually moved into general management, and
Mm.
I do I'm quite familiar with technology. So because I was working for technology companies for 35 years, so yes, I'm familiar with technology. I like technology, and I love it that today technology is enabling so many things to happen.
That's right. So I'm just curious as to how you did end up working with blind people.
Well, when I joined the Atrieve Computer School for the Blind in the Philippines,
Mm.
I remember my first Board of Trustees meeting when they presented that they had trained so many hundred blind people to use the computer and all that. And at the end of the presentation, I kind of asked, I said, what's the purpose of this foundation? We're spending a lot of donors' money. Are we training people to use the computer? Are we training them to be useful to society? And because none of them were getting employed, or very few of them, most of them were working for other NGOs or working for the companies of the board of trustees members, because I initially took two of them into my into a business that I had, and but there were none of them in what I call gainful independent third party employment. So I took it upon my task on the board to be the one to go around companies and try to get the graduates of this computer school for the blind into proper jobs. When you talk to CEOs, they are all very excited. We show how it's done, and they're very, very impressed. But when you try to implement things in a big organization, it's just just get lost. So after 2 years, I gave up, and I decided, well, if we were going to do this, we're going to set up the company ourselves. And that's how Geneshtim actually started. We started by doing e-learning. And we figured out that the internet actually would bridge a lot of gaps for persons with disability in general, because in developing countries or less developed countries, the main obstacle is actually mobility. It is hard for people to travel, persons with disability to travel, to take public transport. So it becomes very hard for them to get to work. For example, the first two blind people we employed to work in an office, by the time they have to pay for a minder to bring them in the morning to the office and to pick them up in the evening to go back home, so they have to pay transportation for 3 trips to the office, and pay the minder an allowance to do the job, a salary to do the job, and the salary that they can earn is actually not very much. So at the end of the day, you make nothing.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense. So I said, this doesn't make sense at all. So that's why we decided that we will set up a business where everybody works from home. It's also in line with the other aspect of our business, is we try to be green. So we don't burn fuel consumption, and don't pollute the air unless it's absolutely necessary.
And don't waste too much paper.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So that's how Geneshtim came along. But how's it been so far? I mean, what is the I guess tenet of Geneshtim? How does it operate?
Well, I think that the thing that we have to make everybody understand is that first and foremost, we are a for-profit business. And I believe that I've been on the board of a couple of these NGOs, foundations, and I've seen so many of them operate, is that I believe that you cannot, it's not sustainable if you are not profitable. And so our first and foremost, we want to be a profitable organization. But secondly, we said that we want to be in a business that is friendly to the environment. So that's why we are in the e-learning business. That's why we make people work from home. And thirdly, it's about society. So this concept of 3P, profits, planet, and people. So, and we focus initially now on persons with disabilities, because I feel that there's a lot of untapped talent that's there. And our skill is to find ways and means to make these talents come together and work together as teams to support each other, and to find businesses that are that can be done by because there are certain businesses which you can't do remotely, but there's a lot that you can do. Like I said earlier, technology today has enabled so many things.
Certainly. Now, tell me, let's be more specific about the company in terms of, you don't just have blind people working in the company, you have different people with different kinds of disabilities, but they don't also all have a disability either.
Yes, I think that's a very good question, and that's a very critical element of how we work. Before we started Geneshtim, we actually tried to set up a call center for the computer school for the blind, and it didn't work out. And I think the reason why it didn't work out was because it was 100% run by visually impaired people. And I think that you know, in any kind of a business and in processes, it's very hard to work effectively when one aspect of, you know, a physical capability is taken out of the equation. But what we do is we have different people with what we call cross disabilities, so that they compensate each other. Like for example, at one stage, today I still have a blind secretary. At one stage, she had a deaf assistant. So, you know, they can complement each other. I mean, whatever the blind person is slow at or cannot do, the deaf person can actually help, and vice versa. And that's basically, you know, one of the core competences we have in our organization. Is we look at work processes and then we say, well, this one, you know, a person cannot speak can do as well as a person who can, and certain things a person they can't see can do as well as a person who can. And for example, our quality assurance department for our language online business is run mostly by blind people.
But the question that
Yeah.
goes begging is, how can a blind person who can't see work with a deaf person who can't hear what they're saying?
Yeah, that's a very good question too, because I've been asked this at that time many times when we had a deaf assistant. Is that when my secretary has had a deaf assistant, they say, well, on top of that, they live in different cities in the Philippines. They are 1 hour's flight from each other. So the question is, how can they work? Well, the point is that if you put them next to each other, they can't communicate. A blind person
That's right.
cannot communicate with a deaf person. But if they go on the internet with a chat box, they can communicate, and that's how they do it. So it doesn't matter whether they are 1 foot apart or 1,000 miles apart. They can communicate on the internet. The fact that they are next to each other doesn't help them at all. So that is one of the very small examples of how you can, you know, make use of technology and look at the processes and combine the different types of disabilities.
And so the work that results from the combination of people with different disabilities working together, is there any difference in the work that they do as opposed to the work that is done by people who don't have a disability at all?
Well, I think at the end of the day, no. In the same thing, you know, there are certain jobs that we won't put a blind person to, and there are certain jobs we won't put a deaf person to do, because, you know, because they're not best suited for it.
Well, you wouldn't put a deaf person to answer the phone.
Yeah.
But
in the same note, I mean, you won't put your salesman to do bookkeeping.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And you won't send your bookkeeper to see a customer. He'll probably screw it up. You know,
That's right.
so it's just a simple management philosophy. You look at your people, you look at their strengths and weaknesses, and then you craft your processes to take advantage of their strengths and to try to overcome their weaknesses or make it such their weaknesses don't matter. So I think that it's a very basic management philosophy.
Absolutely, and I think,
Yeah.
you know, you've got it right. You know, hit the hammer on the head. It's quite a simple concept.
Yeah.
But I don't know why it hasn't really taken off in society very well.
Well, I think it's that people can't see it, you know, and one of the things that I've said to a lot of companies and a lot of foundations who publish, you know, videos and promotional material about disabled people in working, and I think they have approached it from a incorrect perspective. For example, they did a video about my company, and I thought it was not well done, because they approach it from the motherhood apple pie kind of aspect, and I think that a serious businessman might care for it personally, but for the business it doesn't really matter. What they should show is they show exactly how the work is done. So if a businessman can see exactly how the thing fits together, it'll be an aha moment for him, and he will figure it out. But the trouble is that we don't promote those things, and I find it quite disappointing that, you know, when I was asked that they want to do a video on my company, I said, you should do this, you should do that, you should interview our customers. And they didn't want to interview our customers, because I can tell you that my guys are doing a great job. It doesn't mean the diddly squat, actually.
Sure.
What means is that the people who pay us, if they say that we are doing a good job, and I tell you, most of our customers don't actually realize we have disabled people in our organization. We don't actually sell that as it's not a selling point for us. It's not a marketing thing, you know. The reason why we didn't do that is because we feel that businesses might be biased if they feel that we have disabled people, then the quality isn't good enough. We should prove the quality, and then, you know, but we don't hide it. It's on our website. If they visit our website, go to our CSR page, everything is there.
What is your website?
www.genesteam.com.
So that's Jan.
GN.
G, sorry.
Yeah.
GEN.
ASHTIM.
TIM.
Yeah.
As in Mary.
Yeah.
So, tell me that I've spoken to you before on a more social level, and you were saying that there's quite a lot of challenge in trying to get people to use your services.
Yes, we do. I suppose I like to pride ourselves with the fact that we are a bit cutting edge with application of technology.
Sure.
So we are using, internet, the webcams, VoIP to deliver, language services live one-on-one. It's like private tutoring, one-on-one live, but through the internet.
Yes.
And another one of our services is remote PC support. So if you have an internet connection, our technicians sitting in one of the provinces and small towns in Cambodia or China or the Philippines can actually take over your PC and reinstall software for you, connect to your printer if you have problems, or you have a headset that doesn't work, they'll find the right software. You have got computer viruses, they can sort it out for you. Things like that that's what we do. And for many people, they just don't understand it. And if they don't try it, they will not know. But the thing is to get people to try it out, and they will understand. And I think over time, I mean, we are a bit ahead of the curve with a lot of these things. And even though this technology has been around for a while, but I think that most people still don't understand. And if you tell somebody go to a location somewhere and attend a class, I mean, everybody understands that.
Yeah, sure.
And they're prepared to pay. They pay $40-50 an hour, but they can do it with us in the comfort of their home, or when they're traveling in their hotel room, in their airport lounge or whatever, and we charge $18 an hour. It's the same thing, and you can do it without adding pollution to the air, without consuming fuel, without, so I think over time people will get used to this, to the idea.
Yeah. So it's the fact that they're not as used to the technology, rather than the fact that you have people with disability working.
That's right.
And I think that's a really good perspective, and it's true. Is your target market only within Australia or global?
Global. We presently actually have clients in Japan, China, Taiwan, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Australia, as well as in Switzerland.
Right.
Yes.
And what about your workers? Where are they, your staff?
They are scattered all over. Today, the majority of our staff we have about 60 people on our payroll. Probably about 70% of them are in the Philippines, but in all corners of the Philippines. About 40 of them are persons with disabilities, so quite a major percentage.
That's a third of your workforce.
Almost 2/3 basically right now. Right. And the interesting thing is that these persons with disabilities, they're in China, Malaysia, and Philippines.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is there a reason why you hire people from those countries?
Well, I think 2 reasons. One is that, I think that people with disabilities in these countries are the most desperate.
They don't get government support.
They don't get much government support. China is okay. Philippines is terrible. So they basically just don't have jobs. They can't work. Nobody employ them. So I think that, we should first start with them, right? Secondly, of course, because of that situation, it's a lower cost. It's a low cost environment. We pay them reasonably well, I think. Although I'm pretty sure that in Australia you call that a very low pay, But the other thing for us is that we don't have different rates of pay between the able and the disabled. We pay on capability,
Right, so everyone's paid on par,
on par.
depending
That's
on
right.
their merits and
That's
skills
right.
and abilities.
Yes. For example, we have language coaches. Some of them are paid by the hour. We have a number of blind coaches. We have some in wheelchair. We have even one who is has cerebral palsy, and I'm quite surprised that she can actually be a coach. And they all paid exactly the same rate.
Right.
Yeah, and for those who have no disability whatsoever, it's exactly the same rate too.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So there's no discrimination against.
Well, actually, sadly, we do have discrimination. In the reason is that, but it's the flip side of discrimination. We prefer to hire the persons with disability.
Right.
In fact, if you are an job applicant, you jump to the front of the queue, and that's sometimes quite comical because we got people who said, well, I need to have a dialysis machine, so can I be considered disabled? And there was even one girl who said, well, if I broke my little finger, will I jump to the front of the queue?
Wow.
So yeah, well, the thing for me is that if you find the right ones, they become a real asset to the organization because they are so determined,
Sure.
they are focused, they have much less distractions than normal people. And of course, I mean, stability, jobs. I mean, for us, the stability, because if I hire a hotshot graduate from one of the top universities, local universities, I don't think I can keep that person for more than 6 months. The next thing is he wants to work in Unilever or Procter and Gamble or Apple or some big fancy company. Not. So most of the people, the non-disabled people who work with us, subscribe to the cause. They believe in what we're doing. They believe that there is a potential to be a hugely successful business, and we are committed also that the people who work in the business will benefit from the prosperity.
Thomas, where can our listeners go for further information about what you do and how they can get involved?
Well, our website is the place to go to, and
Can we
you
have
can.
that website address once again?
Yes, www.genashtim.com is Gen as in general, Ash
G-E-N.
Gen, Ash as in Ash Wednesday,
Yeah.
and Tim as in Timothy.
Mm-hmm.
So Genashtim in one word.
Genashtim.com.
Yes, that's
All right,
right.
that's great. Well, that all sounds very exciting, very interesting, and I hope you wish you all the success with that job, and of course all your staff as well.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can't really go too far into the products and everything because